First, I want you to pay attention to what Mark Zuckerberg has to say.
I really want to clear my life to make it so that I have to make as few decisions as possible about anything except how to best serve this community. And there's actually a bunch of psychology theory that even making small decisions around what you wear or what you eat for breakfast or things like that, they kind of make you tired and consume your energy.
A lot of people who've accomplished a lot, like businessmen, politicians, even filmmakers, they say that they prefer to wear the same outfit. And so what they're getting at here is a concept that's actually known as decision fatigue. And that's the tendency for our decision-making process to degrade, which often leads to making poor decisions as well. And this is theoretically backed by a concept discovered by Baumeister and colleagues known as ego-depletion. And this theory basically holds that self-control has a limited resource. And whenever we cognitively deliberate or we try to emotionally regulate, we use up this resource. And this is really important to us for maintaining habits because it's often that we have to first have a power of self-control over it. And there could be times where we falter in our habits because we don't have the resource available. So we're already tired from making other decisions in the day. For example, if we say, I'm going to be more healthy and I'm going to go to the gym at some point, but you can come up with all sorts of excuses that you can't do it now. It's generally difficult because you have a lot of other stuff probably weighing on your mind from work or relationship problems or whatever. You'll be so tired at the end of the day that when you have to get up and force yourself to make a decision, you're not going to do it. You're just going to fall back into habit. And that's because your resource is depleted. So what you have to do is set the decision ahead of time. So if something happens, then I'll do this. And this kind of creates a natural segue where the amount of willpower you have to use is vastly reduced because you don't have to make that decision. And so the important way to overcome this is to use an if-then implementation. And this has been used in a lot of research, particularly in clinical settings, where this tool is found highly effective. And basically the way it works is you say, if a certain condition, then I will do this. So for example, if the clock strikes 6, I will go to the gym. If somebody says something rude to me, then I will first take a break before lashing out. For example, if you want to work on your anger. This is very a widely applicable tool. So that's the first tool, to set a condition and then what your response will be. And this will help remove the need to make a decision, which will prolong your habit. And this asks the natural question, which is that how do we maintain making all these decisions? Because as I said, it uses resources. And so the chances that you fail will go up over time. But what we have to keep in mind is that actually things get easier. I mean, we know this on an intuitive level where our habits generally go from being conscious to being subconscious. But I want you to think about that the brain has actually a living organ, right? It also undergoes change. So for example, people who habitually practice cognitive behavioral therapy, when they scan them in an MRI machine, so they scan their brain structure actually changes compared to before. And the way that this happens is when a neuron fires, your brain learns. So it sensitizes that connection. And that pathway towards a response or a habitual behavior, it becomes a lot more sensitive, a lot more easier to trigger. And that's how it goes from being top-down control to just being habitual. And my third tip here is actually, this might seem like it comes out of the blue, but it has a good theory behind it. It's called labeling theory. And that holds that people will behave as what people expect them to be. And so, I mean, this research was mostly, I think, kickstarted by Rosenthal and colleagues. In one study, Rosenthal and Jacobson, they told teachers that certain students were gifted. And those were the students who improved the most during the year. And these students were also chosen completely at random. And so what this shows is that those students would behave as people expected them to behave. In other terms, people would become what people expected of them, what they thought they were. And this was also demonstrated in a smoker study where people who labeled themselves as somebody who's quitting smoking or somebody who is not a smoker, so they've changed. Their behavior was more in line with who they thought they were. So it's really important how you label yourself. So for example, if you exercise, you want to label yourself, I am someone who exercises, I am someone who goes to the gym, I am someone who's healthy. And that's going to also shift other parts of your life where if you go to a fast food restaurant, you might not necessarily be tempted as much anymore. because you see yourself as somebody who will choose the salad, somebody who will choose the high protein diet and not the high saturated fats diet. And another important part is to be careful about telling people. I mean, there's some research that when you tell people, people already treat you as that. So if you're telling people, oh, I'm training for a marathon, people might say, oh, no, how's it going, my fellow marathon runner? Like they might joke around. But it essentially, it makes you already think that you are a marathon runner. So you already completed the task. So it's better to be something that's probably kept to yourself, or at least not necessarily paraded, because you often get a lot of gratification from telling people you're doing something. And then when you're actually doing it, then you don't have any more gratification because you're not going to tell people, right? Because if once you do it, you think, oh, once I do it, I'm going to tell people, right? Because then maybe everyone's going to see, look, I ran a marathon. Like that's going to be kind of cool, right? So all the gratification ends up from talking about it and not actually doing it. And my last tip is think about all the benefits. So when you want to give up, think about why you started. I know it's very cliche, it's probably very cheesy, but there are all sorts of benefits to the activity, if it's a positive activity to your resolution, hopefully. And these benefits, I mean, they can not only be explicit, like you can tell, like you can see what's going to happen, but they can also be kind of implicit, like something that you would not be able to predict. And this could be all sorts of things, but I'm going to give you two in the psychological domain. The first is that when there's all sorts of psychological studies on people who do hobbies in certain particular areas. So for example, in arts or in chess, and they actually find probably differences in their individual psychological abilities and in personality differences as well. So for example, stuff like memory or stuff like even like openness to creativity, stuff like that. And this is probably a substantial part in those activities contributing towards positive developmental growth as a human being. And then also another one that a lot of people actually don't think about, but I think that this one's sort of underrated, is the concept of epigenetics. And epigenetics is a concept that genes can actually be turned on and off by the environment. And this could be in the womb, but it could also be outside of the womb. So, I mean, there's this whole Wikipedia page. I'm just going to take one example, which is exercise. A lot of people say, you should always exercise, you should always sleep. And you say like, well, I don't really see the benefits immediately, or I can tolerate, the uncomfortable feeling. But there are usually a lot of other hidden benefits. So for exercise, there's a whole Wikipedia page on the epigenetic effects of exercise. In one study, they found that people who exercise, or sedentary males it was, who exercised one leg had about 4,000 changes in their DNA methylation sites. And in one leg, I believe, but not the other. I mean, there's also a ton of other studies and a ton of other stuff that scientists are also discovering too, that we don't know yet, but that's occurring. And these sort of pathways, they can explain why exercise correlates with higher intelligence, correlates with better mood, correlates with better health, and it could literally be like a biological change. It's like very very scientifically hard, I suppose. And so anyways, so those are my four major tips. So to review, first, implement if-then intentions. So when you're going to do the behavior, refer to yourself and believe in yourself as somebody who does the behavior. When it's hard, keep in mind that it's going to get easier. And then also think about how it will benefit you. And this could be consciously, and remember that there's a lot of stuff that you don't know on how this behavior is likely, if it's a good behavior, can benefit you. By the way, if it's a bad behavior, it can also hurt you. For example, lots of drugs can actually activate schizophrenia in people. So that might be one example of an epigenetic change. But after all this, how do we know? I mean, it's backed by theory, by psychological theory and lots of psychological findings. But how do we know that this is actually going to help me? Well, I'm going to be trying to implement these same behaviors in myself. So my goal is going to be making 50 YouTube videos this year, and so we'll know if these work. If you look back at my account and you see that I'm posting, then it's probably good advice. Okay, well, anyways, yeah. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this helps. And if you enjoyed learning about the psychology in this video, you're probably going to enjoy learning about psychology in some of the other videos I posted, for example, about a stalker. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.